Hey guys, welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank. So, what we're going to talk about today is our new segment, the Book of the Week. So, here we're going to talk about one particular book we read this week, and we're just going to go over it and see how we feel at the end of it. So, the book I read this week that stood out the most to me was Exit Stage Left, the Snagglepuss Chronicles. Now, when I first heard about this book, I was like, what? Snagglepuss is going to be a gay playwright in the 1950s? What does that have to do with absolutely anything? And then I saw who's writing it. Okay, Mark Russell. He did that Flintstones run, which was really good. All right, so what's the premise here? Okay, wait, 1950s. Oh crap, communist scare. Got it, got it. And I didn't really get that again until I actually picked it up, because I didn't read the little preview they put in the Suicide Squad Banana Splits issue, because I didn't see any point in reading that. I still don't care enough about Suicide Squad to read it, but coming into this, and I did just read that little teaser to that. I have to say I'm very impressed with the direction they went with here, because it isn't just Snagglepuss is a gay playwright. Snagglepuss is a gay playwright in a world that is sort of obsessed with being afraid and fear. Communism is this big boogeyman, and the country's at its wits' end trying to stop it. And we see things like the House Un-American Activities Committee, which has brought in members of the Broadway community, such as Dorothy Parker, who was a founding member of the Algonquin Round Table and a contributor for the New Yorker, which actually inspired Snagglepuss to become a playwright. And we see things like how the House of Un-American Activities Committee is going further to, just sort of investigate people like Lillian Hellman, who these things actually happened. Lillian Hellman was a member of the Communist Party, and she left, but she was still under scrutiny. She was blacklisted from Hollywood along with Dorothy Parker at a certain point for their work in Hollywood and for their political beliefs. And it's sort of interesting, because that is sort of happening now. There was the sort of belief that if you have right-wing beliefs, you risk getting blacklisted in Hollywood. But coming back here, you get what's going on here. They sort of settled a bit more at the end when they introduced the new member of the committee, Gigi Allen, and she talks about how it's important you go after these people because they affect the culture, and America or any country becomes that which it enjoys, and if it enjoys depravity, moral decay, and communism, it will become depraved, immoral, indecent, and communist. That's her logic. And what's weird is she doesn't see that she's creating that to an extent, because throughout this whole comic there is this little mention of this couple going to see a big show. They're like, I got tickets to the show, we got to go see it, it's going to be a big thing. And it turns out what they're going to go see is an execution of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. And they were Soviet spies. They'd stolen and sold secrets to the Soviets, namely stuff from the Manhattan Project. So not only is this book being social commentary, it's being, as far as I can tell, very historically accurate with this story. This isn't sort of like the Flintstones, which had this blank slate to work on, and you use the characters to talk about the social issues. We're taking these characters, putting them in real life scenarios, real actual events in history, and just letting it ride from there. Now, Snagglepuss here is coming off as someone who is very, almost wise beyond his years, but there's a certain fragility to him. There's almost a sort of ignorance to him. He sort of feels he's wearing almost a cone of protection, sort of like with Tyrion Lannister, wear it like armor and it cannot hurt you. But he's also very aware that, people can't know he's gay. So he does put on the public persona of not so much part of it, but he goes with a date to a lot of his premieres, the last days of his shows. He always has a date with him, and his date is very aware of what's going on. But he also, goes covertly, to clubs like the Stonewall. And this is actually where it gets a bit weird. Not his relationship with his boyfriend Pablo, or his lover Pablo. We don't really know, because at his apartment he's moving stuff with someone named Marco. So I don't know if he's in um, strictly monogamous relationship or if he's just the boyfriend of the week. I'm thinking that because of the secrecy he has to occupy, he has to adopt here. I would say it's a very monogamous thing, and his relationship with Marco was nothing. Like all we know is Marco's helping him move furniture, so that means nothing. But here, Snagglepuss seems to sort of he's very level-headed. I think is the issue. He's not ignorant because as Pablo talks about his time in Cuba when he was living in Cuba before he fled to America, Batista was talking the same sort of rubbish that the House of Un-American Activities Committee is talking about, and Batista would flex his muscles on um, a group that doesn't quite fit in. The a marginalized group that was the word I was looking for, which is why that pause is there. But it's again sort of it's a very real thing. Governments like to show they're in control, and the first thing they do to show they're in control is they make it look like they're in control by picking on the little guy, and it's designed to look like a big deal. It'll be built up as a big deal, and people that stand up to the government are just they're usually killed or dragged through the mud. And that's what happened to Lillian Hellman, who was a friend of Snagglepuss, and when Snagglepuss talks to Lillian, she describes the committee as a bunch of shabby men who want to make other people feel shabby. And they have a list. And whether it was supplied by Lillian, we don't quite know. It might have been, but on the list is Peter Potamus and S-Puss. Snagglepuss is on the list as well. So we know that they're coming for him. And what's interesting is Gigi actually says, we're going to go after Snagglepuss because if you shake the big apple off the tree, all the smaller apples will come down. So she's going to make an example out of Snagglepuss. And the committee says, well, we've already tried to go after him. Nothing's happened. And that was in the little teaser Snagglepuss brought before the committee. I thought that would happen later, but it doesn't. And she reveals in a manila envelope is Snagglepuss going into the Stonewall. Now, that's how the comic ends, and honestly, I was a bit blown away by how well thought out, well written, and well presented this is. This is a legitimate historical piece with cartoon characters. It almost feels like the Muppets. Like, when the Muppets are really good, you literally forget that they're felt puppets interacting with real people. Like, the Christmas Carol. When Christmas Carol is played up really straight, when the Muppets Christmas Carol is played up really straight, you forget for a moment that there's a frog here. That Gonzo is whatever Gonzo is. It's never really consistent. And that there's a rat here, no one's called the health department. Because the writing is good, the characters play their roles so straight. And Disney does that too with, like, in Mickey's Christmas Carol. There are moments in the Christmas Carol when it's played up very straight and you forget that's Duck and that this shouldn't be called Mickey's Christmas Carol. But there's that beauty to it, that sort of historical accuracy that helps place you not only within this world, but almost within the time period. You're seeing not just this is the 1950s to this is people in the 1950s. This is people in the 1950s. This is an event in the 1950s. You're kind of there because of how well placed the characters are. Now, if there's one issue I have with this book, it is the art. Everything looks the animals look a bit too animal. And by that I mean Snagglepuss, Quick Draw McGraw, Peter Potamus, and Huckleberry Hound is in here, and just love it. They all look too much like animals. This is clearly designed to have them blend in, so they look like animals that have evolved. But they still walk on their hind legs. I mean, they still got that little upward curve that most animals that walk on four legs have. And their hind legs. And their faces just look weird, and especially weird when Snagglepuss makes out with his boyfriend. It's just sort of like, this, should we call the police? Not because they're gay, but because it's a man making out with a lion. Mountain lion, to be clear. But, yeah, I really enjoy this book. I can't wait to see what else comes up with next month. This may be the best non-mainstream book DC has, and I kind of want to see what's going on. I think this and White Knight and Mr. Miracle are going to be in a race to see what's going on with them. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you read a particularly good book for you this week, I'd love to hear it in the comment section. If you also read Snuggles, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And I will catch you all later. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing out. May your fandom serve you well.